I got a nasty letter from Washington saying you need to come back to Washington or we'll never promote you again because you've spent too much time overseas.
Lee Davis and Gwilym Roberts are the two IPs in a pod, and you are listening to a podcast on intellectual property,
brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys.
So, Gwilym, time now for what's become an annual one for us, the annual WIPO podcast.
Oh, yeah, no, it's the big league now.
The big league. I mean, we did a WIPO podcast at Atlanta last year.
Yeah.
So this is our anniversary WIPO podcast.
It's like the World Cup of patents WIPO, isn't it?
So we've got Charles and Brian with us. Charles, do you want to introduce yourself first? Should we go with you?
Certainly. Charles Randolph. I'm the head of the section that deals with industry and NGO relations at WIPO, and this sits within the external relations division. So all the types of liaison work with groups like yours, with groups like INTA, etc.
Yeah, we talk a lot, don't we, in terms of email and stuff like that. It's nice to meet you in person.
Pleasure.
We've met in person.
Yes,
we can't talk about it.
No, absolutely not.
No, certainly not.
Okay, fine.
Carry on.
We'll talk about that later. And Brian, tell us a bit about yourself.
So, well, first of all, thank you so much, gentlemen, for inviting us. My name is Brian Beckham. I head up our Internet Dispute Resolution team at WIPO. And primarily, people here at INTA will know that for the UDRP, which is the Uniform Domain Name Dispute Resolution Policy, which helps brand owners reclaim infringing domain names. And then, of course, we're involved in policy talks in the internet space and coordinate closely with our INTA colleagues on those types of matters.
Cool, that sounds like really exciting stuff to get into. Should we talk a little bit about the NGO sort of stakeholder relationship side of it first, Charles? Is that sort of perhaps a nice place to start? How many relationships does an organisation like WIPO have? It must have many, many relationships.
It does. Technically, WIPO has over 300 officially accredited NGO or industry associations, but there are approximately, I would say, a half dozen to a dozen that are actually very, very active. SIPA, INTA, for example, is one of our most active industry associations.
Yeah, cool. And day-to-day, weekly basis, what's your gig? What are you doing?
What would I be doing? I would be receiving delegations in Geneva, making sure that specialists from the different associations matched up with our specialists, setting up schedules, organizing events. I would be coordinating teams from WIPO coming out to events like this. So if they wanted a specialist like Brian to speak on his topics, or someone to speak on, say, the Madrid system or other things. So it's quite a bit of liaison work, and I think what's really interesting about it for me is that it involves the entire organization of WIPO. So it's not just one section.
Yeah.
We have the copyrights, we have the trademarks, we have the patents, we have the arbitration mediation. There's a whole gamut of activities. And it's a really fun job because you get to liaise with people all across the spectrum.
Are you on the road a lot?
No, actually I'm not so often.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, not as often as you would think. Supporting many colleagues on the road quite a bit, yes.
Okay.
And then we receive, I would say, probably 12 formal delegations for day-long visits at WIPO each year.
So, bringing you in, Brian, my understanding of your area is quite limited. So in my head, I remember the early days of the internet. It's sad being that old, isn't it? And there were things like domain name squatters, where people would perhaps get in first, even before a brand had thought about protecting its identity. Is it that sort of thing, or has it moved on significantly?
It's largely that sort of thing. So we actually, just last month in Geneva, we hosted a conference where we commemorated the 25th anniversary of the UDRP. And in preparing for that, we went over some of the history, and there was a lot of people around here will know an article in Wired magazine where the journalist went to register McDonald's.com because it was freely available, started down the path of exploring what does it take to get a domain name, how do they deal with clashes with trademarks, and so on. And at its core, the problem remains the same. So brand owners can reclaim domain names that have been acquired by someone before they could get to it. And it's evolved a little bit over the years to where in the past you would see pay-per-click advertising was quite popular in one phase. Just extortion, pay me some money or I'll put up some things on this website that you don't like. And that still exists, but we're seeing a much bigger intersection these days, which has been really kind of accelerated by advancements in AI tools.
Right.
But already going back a couple of years, we've seen a much sharper intersection between the work we do and cybersecurity, phishing, fraud. So there's quicker ways to address that, but a lot of brand owners will still file a case with us if there's a phishing campaign on the back of a domain name so that they can permanently keep that name out of the hands of infringers in the future.
Can we just track back to something you said fairly early on in that piece, and that was the nexus between sort of domain name, registration, management, and trademarks? Because I think people think that they're one and the same, and clearly they're not, are they? So how do the two come together? How do you...
Really, it's up to individual brand owners and businesses to pull them together. There are a small handful of IP offices and national domain name registries. So you guys might be familiar with the .uk for the UK namespace, .ch for Switzerland, where we live. Some IP offices and the national registries help provide information to a trademark applicant or a domain name registrant to say, in effect, you've sought this right, or you've sought this domain name. Did you want to also register a trademark or register a domain name to prevent somebody else from doing this? It's still a fairly niche thing that the IP offices and the national registries communicate. So ultimately, it's a lot of times it's down to organizations like INTA, law firms, vendors, and so on to scan what's going on the internet, provide reports to the brand owners, and then they decide. If names are available, they register them. If they're already taken, then they have some choices to make.
So the thing that always interested me, the internet was always the Wild West, and I remember the early cyber squatting thing, wasn't Elizabeth?
www. Really Wild West.
There you go. That's what it was. We had Elizabeth yesterday was saying, wasn't she, that she was involved in, I think, the first cyber squatting case in New York, where no one knew what domain names were or how it all worked. What is WIPO's jurisdiction, as it were? How do you guys actually fit in with the global system? Do you own it?
We don't own there's an organization out of California called ICANN, and they're a kind of a spin-off of some U.S. government agencies that run the kind of the technical protocols that keep the internet running. The way the UDRP works, it's an alternative to courts. So it's an administrative mechanism. There was an early design question about whether it should be arbitration or administrative process, which is managed through contract. So every person who registers a .com domain name anywhere in the world is subject to an agreement which says you agree to go to this organization, the BIPO, in case someone says they'd like to make a claim against you. And the beauty of it is it allows the registration authorities to basically outsource the complaints that would otherwise be coming to them, and it operates globally, which is a necessity nowadays because the need to go to individual national courts obviously would be time and cost prohibitive for brand owners.
And what you're at INTA? We're all at INTA. This is lots of INTA podcasts. What's your goal here? What are you trying to achieve? What are you hoping to get out of it?
For us, I should say we have colleagues from our Hague department and Madrid department in addition to Charles and myself. And so tomorrow we have a session in the plenary where we're providing an update on all the WIPO services. Specifically, I think we're not really different in that respect. Awareness raising, we're very popular. We had in the past 10 years a pretty steady rise, average 8 to 10% year on year in terms of case numbers. So it's something that obviously a lot of people know about and use, but still there are people who maybe aren't familiar with our services. We're here to allow people to ask us questions if they want to do a deeper dive on particular topics. We're providing some updates on policy work we're doing.
Charles, we had a quick chat just before we started recording. You're pretty busy here as well.
Yes, quite busy.
What have you got?
Tomorrow, as at the session that Brian had mentioned, I'm going to be presenting on one of our programs called WIPO Alert. And this is a endeavor whereby national governments will provide WIPO with lists of URLs that are illegitimate, pirate websites.
Right.
And what we do is we consolidate those, put them together, and then we make them available to the general public so that people who are running advertisements, legitimate companies, brand owners that are running advertisements can run checks before they place on illegitimate websites.
Sure.
So there's a lot of work being done in those types of domains. People aren't even familiar. There's more and more work being done on protecting IP, enforcing IP. We're also going to be discussing a customs recordation system that we are piloting. It's not yet launched, but that will be put in place later in the year to enable customs authorities to have more ready access to IP materials so that they can more readily identify infringing goods at the border.
That's
at the
like
request
an
of-
anti-counterfeiting kind of measure.
Yes, so to speak. Yes.
Okay.
And then, of course, as Brian had also mentioned, this being INTA and the Madrid system managing
Yeah.
global trademarks, we're going to be launching for the first time here the new eMadrid platform, which is kind of a revised, renewed platform to facilitate the activities of trademark attorneys and owners in terms of managing their trademarks.
As you said, Lee, because I'm a patent attorney, I always think, oh, WIPO, they do PCT, right? That's it. But you guys do you do a lot, actually.
Yeah, PCT is our major earner. I think it earns roughly 77 to 78% of the revenues of the organization, followed by Madrid.
Okay.
As every business has to have a trademark.
Yeah.
Not every business has to have
Yeah.
a patent. And
Yeah.
so,
Interestingly, at least the different business models with firms that do patents and trademarks. They're quite different business models, actually. But yeah, that's interesting. And how did you get into all this, Charles? How did you get to WIPO? Where were you before?
That's a great question.
yeah, it's a kind of an odd question. I was a foreign service
It's
officer.
not an odd question. It's a podcast. That's what we do.
I was a U.S. diplomat, a foreign service officer. Spent most of my time overseas because I really, really enjoyed spending time overseas until I got a nasty letter from Washington saying you need to come back to Washington or we'll never promote you again because you've spent too much time overseas. First they sent me to Afghanistan, where I spent a year in one of the latter years of the war.
Wow.
Then I went back to Washington, and just by chance, they put me in an office of intellectual property enforcement.
Okay.
So up until 2015, I had never even heard of WIPO.
Right.
And then suddenly I was plunged into this office and I had to help work and coordinate U.S. government policy, interagency policy on IP, because IP is so much more than just the technical aspect. There's foreign policy aspect, there's the culture, there's everything else. So this was an office that kind of managed at a very high level, because as we all know, it's the U.S. PTO that leads on all the technical issues, without a question. And so at that time, I made some contacts at WIPO. It looked like an organization really solid that was very, very interested in joining, and position came available. I applied for it and decided, after some thinking, that I would make the jump. So
So you're not U.S. government?
I am
at
not
WIPO,
U.S.
you are
government.
WIPO at WIPO.
I'm 100% WIPO at WIPO, yeah.
Okay.
I took my retirement from the Foreign Service and started a second career.
Cool.
We've got to get Brian's backstory as well.
Yeah, definitely. Please.
Mine may be slightly less interesting.
Afghanistan in there, maybe?
So I was doing trademark prosecution work amongst a few other things at a boutique firm in the Washington, D.C. area. And the opportunity came up to do a rotation as a case manager for the work that we do. And the idea was to come over and do that for a year and learn the ropes about this domain name stuff and go back to DC. And one thing just sort of led to another. I was lucky enough to get onto a few project teams and really enjoyed being in Switzerland and the work that we were doing. So I've been here almost 20 years abroad now.
Wow.
Goodness me. So I've met a few people from WIPO, and one feeling I get is that maybe Geneva generally is just full of people from, it's a UN agency, isn't it? So it's kind of international place. One thing I remember very strongly was a visitor from WIPO coming to London and taking a few attorneys out for lunch. And at the end of it, when they came with the bill, they said, "Can you just charge it?" They said, "No, you can't just randomly assume that they'll let the UN pay later." Is that what happens in Geneva? Or was that just a one-off?
Must be a one-off.
No, it's quite interesting, but it gives that insight into a place where there's a huge visibility of the international community within Geneva.
There really is. There's a real big civil service footprint in Geneva from the international community. It's a big driver of the local economy. and we're all very happy to be there.
Yeah. And in terms of this is a genuine curiosity. Once you get working for WIPO gets you right to work and all that kind of thing. Presumably that's all worked out. That's quite interesting. So you get that adventure of living abroad with a bit less complexity, I suppose.
To a certain extent, I mean, obviously they facilitate your ID cards, your work permits, etc. But essentially, at least when I was hired by WIPO, other than that, it was really up to me to find a house, to find do all the logistics work. But it's a wonderful place to work, excellent work environment, and as Brian was saying, Geneva is just a lovely place.
Do they need any podcasters? WIPod.
Sorry. You're on form, aren't you?
Oh,
right. So can I ask a question about INTA? Okay, because you guys are here I was saying force, but you can see the stand. It's got a nice big ceiling dangly hanging above it, so it's easy to find. So INTA's important to you, yeah? What are the objectives? What do you get out of it?
Well, I mean, the users of the Madrid system, I mean, it's mainly our INTA clients, are the companies, the attorneys, and then we also get tremendous exposure, right? If Brian is here, how often do we have the opportunity to have an audience of 10,000 go? So it offers a tremendous opportunity to get our messages across, to network, things like that.
Are you ready for London next year? It's official now.
It's official. We talk about it.
Banner behind us.
As well. We're not going to talk about it on the other podcast, even though we knew.
Yeah, well, we didn't know because obviously we wouldn't know that.
We wouldn't know. Yeah, sorry, we didn't know.
We didn't know.
Yeah, because it was well kept secret.
Back to the question.
Well, I'll let Brian say, but very, very ready for London. Especially, I think we could all do without a 9-hour jet lag, which is plaguing many of us these past couple of days.
That's good. Well, I guess for you also, I mean, again, it's an opportunity while you're there to every year you can do some extra visits, I guess. Would you normally bolt a couple of things on, do you think, or is that quite interesting?
When we come to INTA, do you mean?
Yeah,
you're angling for a SEPA gig. Is that you're thinking? Yeah.
And also the podcast bus.
Podcast bus, yeah.
We think, well, we've no idea. Well,
it's got to happen now. It's got to happen.
Did we say it? We said it already.
We've said it about 2 times now.
Okay.
So,
We reckon we're going to get a bus and do the podcast from a double-decker bus next year. So hopefully you guys are on
that would be really cool.
That's mostly the reaction we're getting.
You can start off in Geneva and do.
Road tour.
Let's
do it.
Yeah, road tour. Yeah,
good. Yeah.
And that saves you travelling costs then as well. Cut hammocks in the bus and we're sorted.
But I think, honestly, I think everyone's thrilled that it will be in London next year.
Yeah, it's a cool city at the moment. Well, so you guys are obviously American origin. When you're over here, do you go and see family, or do you just come here and go home again?
It depends. I was lucky enough this time to get to see my mom for a few days before I came over here. It doesn't always work out that way, but this time it was the stars aligned, and so that's always great too.
Where was that?
So that's in Cincinnati, Ohio. So sort of a pit stop halfway over here, and then hit the ground running Saturday morning, 8 a.m. with the table topic. And there you go.
I think it all depends on where our families live as well. My family's on the East Coast, so I had taken the opportunity to go back over the Easter holiday, visit my mother. On this trip, no, it'll be just San Diego and back to Geneva.
That's a good trip.
So, I was thinking maybe end the podcast with another tangential kind of mystery question.
Do it.
If that's okay, because I have one.
I'm ready.
So, guys, what we do, we've not been doing it a lot while we've been here because these things go through quite quickly. But ordinarily, we try and come back to the end of the podcast with a question that's maybe related to the content, but maybe only loosely. This is quite loosely. What's the worst or the funniest or most unusual domain name you've ever seen?
Oh, that's actually unusual. You've got me there for once. Because you've got one.
Of course I've got one.
That's just so.
Yeah.
I can think of some, but they're all really rude, so I'm not doing it on the podcast. I'm going to duck that for the first time in my.
I'll come back to you.
Okay, I'll think about it. Thank you. Yes.
Brian, you've seen lots of domain names.
We've
clearly,
seen lots,
you've seen lots. So come on, you must have a table.
So there's kind of two lenses for this question. There's sometimes some of the defenses we get for why someone registered a domain name. It matches your your cat's name or sound your baby makes or something like this. It just happens to also be a famous brand. But I think one that always kind of stuck out to me was in the U.S. for our American football, we have the Super Bowl, big TV thing.
Yeah.
And so there was a gentleman who had registered a bunch of domain names around the Super Bowl a number of years ago. And he wrote in and said, no, this is all just some confusion. I'm very sorry. I wasn't really thinking about this NFL guys. I'm just a fan of owls. And I said, I wanted to put up a bunch of websites about superb owls.
Superb owls.
Needless to say, the NFL was able to reclaim that name.
Absolutely genius. Charles, you got any? You got a little
Honestly, I
name up
think
your
I'll
sleeve?
have to join Gwilym in that.
This is such
Nothing
a
comes
deflate.
to
I
mind
was
on
really
this.
impressed with this question when
Only
it formulated in my mind.
I've got my answer now.
Oh, go on then.
Which is tangential because it's a cheat answer. My grandmother's name
Yeah.
is Dorothy, and she was known as Dots. And so when Beth, my little one, was born, her middle name is Dots.
Brian's alarm is going off, so that's the end of the podcast. But carry on.
So her name is Beth Dots Roberts.
Oh.
And everyone says it sounds like a domain name. That's all.
Okay.
That's it.
So mine's very, very quick if you've got just a minute left. So we were tendering for a new SEPA database some years ago. So we had a number of firms come up to show us their wares. And one was very, very excited because they were doing something for the British Psychotherapy organisation. And it was therapist register.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Therapist and he was so proud of it. He put,
Risky.
put therapistregister.co.uk up on the screen and stuff like that. Yeah, there's only one way you can read that.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of INTA, and I'll catch up at some point, I'm sure.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. On behalf of WIPO, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.